Well, hey everyone, it's Jerry Bambo here. I am a creative fan fiction version of the Hick Hyde from Timesplitters 1. So anyway, I wanted to review this, have a little analysis of the recently released Timesplitters Rewind Early Access. Let's talk about the good first. First of all, the menu settings are some of the most important features of any first-person shooter. And so far, these settings are field of view, the ability to turn off the reticle, as well as in-game gore, turning that off. I am so grateful they included these settings first and foremost. I can't emphasize how important it is to have things like this, and given the amount of time and stress the Timesplitters Rewind team has no doubt endured trying to get this project to blast off, I'd say they prioritized the perfect settings, so good job on that. I have a little bit of experience in game design myself, and at least from what I got to do, making menu settings is actually much more trivial and tedious and precarious a process to properly code in than you might think. You know, you can mess one thing up and it screws up the whole entire game, so maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seems to me that getting menu settings right is kind of a difficult thing to do, so good job on that. Now let's talk about the big, next awesome thing that I love about this new Timesplitters Rewind, and that would be the the level design. Specifically arcade, but we'll get to that in a minute. The story maps, as I was going to talk about, are basically almost replicas of the original, as far as the floor plan goes. And I didn't really expect that. I kind of assumed that since the team was forced to remake the assets instead of just being able to rip the originals, that they might take some creative liberties and add some more stuff, more hallways, places you could go. And well, actually they kind of did, because there's actually a bit more health and armor here and there than in the original games. And that's good, because it balances the difficulty. It doesn't really matter to me as a Timesplitters fan if they kept the story maps as replicas of how you played through them in the original games, but since they did, and it works extremely well, I like it. So, as someone who played original Timesplitters at least 3 times a month on average ever since it came out, I found myself able to breeze through the story maps on hard right from the start. Only I had a little bit of trouble in the Chinese map. Other than that, I just breezed through them, and they were fun. So, the arcade maps, however, are really where we get to see some awesome improvements in these floor plans. There are new areas and new routes you can find in these arcade maps now, and that's awesome. My favorite change is hands down the Spaceways arcade map, which now allows players to travel the entire distance of the whole Spaceways. Before, you were basically trapped in this one rocket room. And I always thought that was a little lame. Not sure why they did that, but the map was never too big.
Can't get out that way.
Now you can run through all the hallways from start to finish, and I think it makes for an excellent deathmatch map. There is so much more space to run around in. It's like, why didn't they do this before? The tomb is still locked underground in one tiny area, but I mean, that map is even larger and it's got more cumbersome, repetitive tunnels, so that sort of makes sense. You know, the tomb has always been on par with, like, Compound as far as, like, you want a claustrophobic map to play? There you go. My second favorite change is a beautiful, magical new door in the Spaceport map. Spaceport was always one of my favorites, my all-time favorites. But you see this window? In the original Timesplitters, to get to that room there, you had to run all the way through these hallways, all the way around. And this was great if you're playing Capture the Bag or Assault, which I don't think Assault was available on that map, if I remember. But playing just about any other mode, it potentially caused a very tedious and cumbersome experience overall. More of a point of frustration than flow, that you couldn't get around this area. Especially during elimination matches, where it became kind of a slog to find, like, the last player on the map. So I am really glad that they changed this. Yeah, we're gonna put a nice little new doorway right here. Circus is also superior to the original map. It wouldn't be fair to say that's because of all the new details, since Free Radical Design was on their budget working with that ancient hardware, the new circus is superior because of all these new openings, again, in the floor plan where the players can run to. The original circus had a main tent that felt way too claustrophobic, like you were just trapped in there. It would take forever to find your way out. Those wooden hallways were just looping on, and it just got confusing, and it was more stressful really than fun when you were, trying to get someone on the other side of the map, or you were playing bag tag. It wasn't really the funnest thing. So, the new circus has a big opening to the beautiful outdoors, and these are absolutely much needed changes to these maps. So, I just wanted to talk about those few things for what makes these games so great, or this game right now. Player hands are all here, with stylish reload animations for all the guns, and the guns themselves also handle extremely well. And they each have a different kind of unique feel to them, which the original Timesplitters was unfortunately lacking. All these weapons feel modernized, dynamic, full of weight, mass, structure. You can really feel the gun in your hands as you play the game. Sniper rifles are actually effective, both in story and arcade. Before, there wasn't really much of a point to use the sniper rifle in arcade, for at least Timesplitters 1 and 2. From what I remember, the aiming was still pretty wonky. And I love the aiming in the original Timesplitters. I do. I really like that golden eye style feel. But now we're on the PC, and I think they always probably could have done something with the sniper rifle to make it maybe have a fixed reticle in comparison to the other guns. Sniper rifles were definitely a fail in TS1 and TS2. And they've really made them awesome. I don't even like sniper rifles, but I love using them now. So, I could go on about how great everything is, but I do have a limited time here. So, I can only do 15-minute videos on this channel, so I'm just going to briefly cover a few issues or minor complaints. And they're not much of a problem, especially considering that this is early access. But my main complaint is the lack of lighting options. I know, I said that the menu settings are perfect, and they are perfect for an early access release, given the amount of time that they've had to put all of this together. But I do hope very much that the final game included some brightness, gamma, and contrast settings, because for me, it is way too dark. I had to turn the brightness all the way up on my monitor, and it was still too dark. So I had to hook up an HDMI cable to my computer to play the game on someone's TV, with the brightness settings all the way up, static gamma all the way up, and dynamic contrast all the way off. This was the only way I could see in certain shadowy areas of the game. I've noticed this has been a common problem with a lot of games for some reason recently, and I think it might have something to do with programmers sort of sitting in dark rooms staring at screens. Working at night, they may not realize how dark their game is. You might want to test it with the windows opened. There were also a few glitches here and there, which is definitely to be expected with an early access. The bots went comatose on the subway map pretty often, and for some reason there's multiple bags spawning on the chasm map when I tested bag tag. That was weird. Excuse me. There ended up being like 4 bags and no one was scoring. It was funny. I've never seen that before, but I hope they fix that for the final game because, awkward. But you know what? Other than those minor complaints, so far, this game is perfect. Now I want to talk about, really quickly, a few miscellaneous thoughts that I have. The soundtrack has been recomposed, and this I did not expect either. Graham Norgate's original Timesplitters soundtrack is a tough act to follow, and perhaps damn near impossible. That man is an underrated musical genius. He is the Mozart of our time. I feel that so confidently that if anyone tells me otherwise, I will calmly be able to shrug and say, "Oh yeah? You think Graham Norgate ain't Mozart? That's fine that you feel that way, little insect, because these melodies stand as an epic testament to the truth. Graham Norgate is on par with the most well-renowned composers of our history. Specifically, Graham's sci-fi tracks always felt genuinely beyond this world, as though they could have only been produced by a man who truly was from the future, for real. This man has seen things you people wouldn't believe. ships off the rings of Saturn, etc., etc. That's what his music felt like. He created science fiction themed tracks that were masquerading as retro, sort of vintage, quote-unquote, lazy sci-fi, and it ironically made them sound even more futuristic. I have never in my life heard any other music quite as unique and spine-chilling as these tracks. That said, since they did remake the music, well, it's still very good. The docks, the Chinese restaurant, and village all sound amazing. Just as good as, if not maybe even cooler than the originals. I think I'm going to make a separate video talking about the music, because there's just too much to talk about with it, but I wanted to mention quickly the Spaceways track, because that was always one of my all-time favorites. And in the original Spaceways, there was this beautiful, eerie, sort of preternatural diva voice singing in the background so eloquently. I always wondered what the origins of that diva were. She sounds almost like Faba Laguna from The Fifth Element, but even more epic and with far more depth, in my opinion. Even though there is this sort of possibly repetitive looping track, it wasn't repetitive to me, hearing this voice. So where did that diva come from? It could have been Graham himself, just recording himself sort of singing and then adding weird effects and changing the pitch. I don't know where it came from, but wherever it did come from, the final music sounds just beautiful and unlike anything else. So that diva is missing from the new Spaceways track, and that's a little bit disappointing. But it still sounds really good as it is. It's still a very good track, the new Spaceways, and all of this music is good. I specifically loved the Chinese restaurant. That was a major improvement. It really gives an atmosphere to the feel of Harry Tipper being in sort of like a retro B action movie from the 70s or whatever, or the 80s. And it's got some really neat instrumental effects that get the adrenaline going. It's just much, much more intense, and I like that a lot. The docks also sound much cooler. It's a much darker, deeper track. It's got these new effects in it. I love the new Docks track. It is epic. And also the Village. The Village, I was a little bit off-put at first at how it sounds kind of creepy and more like cinematic. But it still is, it's awesome. And I don't think that it's an improvement over the original, the Village track. It's just different and just as good as the original, and you can't really have one without the other. I do feel the same way about Docks, okay? The rest of the music it's good. It's very good. It works really well. Honestly, it's fine. But you just can't really top the genius of Graham Norgate. That's all I'm going to say about that. So, my final thoughts here are, this game really is perfect so far. I hope that in the finished game that they at least include the characters Leo Krups, the Maiden, the Aztec Warrior, the High Priest, and last but not least, my personal favorite I could always relate to the most, Mr. Hick Hyde. Chemistry major dropout, turned rogue chemist.